Welcome to the Pushing Buttons podcast with Marks and ANNIEPOO. My name is ANNIEPOO and I have abandonment issues. As you might be able to tell, I am here alone today. Marks is out sick for the week, so it's just me, all alone, with my abandonment issues. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. But Marks is out sick, so I will be monologuing for the next 30 to 40 minutes on who knows what. We'll find out. I do have something prepared. It is also 3 o'clock in the morning, so I apologize in advance for any rambling or any incomplete thoughts that I might produce during our episode this week. But, while I'm here and alone and definitely not feeling salty about being alone, I figured this might be a good time to revisit some of the questions that were submitted to us a few weeks ago when we asked for questions for our Q&A. We did have a lot of questions that we weren't able to get to and are going to answer them over time throughout each episode release. And if you have any more questions, please do feel free to submit them. DM either myself or Marks. Submit the question to Push Buttons Pod on Twitter. However you can get a hold of us, please do so if you have any questions for us. But the questions that I want to focus on today are about broadcast production. Got some questions about the best place to start producing and gaining experience, as well as a request for tips and tricks for building and prepping shows. Before we get to those questions, though, I thought it would be nice if I just talked a little bit about my background, where I am right now in terms of experience level as a broadcast producer and bit of context of how I got to this point. I do want to be honest and realistic about the kind of advice that I can give for where I am in my career right now, because I do consider myself a rookie producer. I've been doing this for a little more than a year, but I've got to do a lot of really cool events. I am also largely self-taught, so the kind of stories that I share and the advice I can give is going to be very different from somebody who studied broadcast engineering in school or from somebody who's already been working in the industry for 5 or 10 years, So, yeah, I just want to be transparent and honest about who I am and the experiences that I do have. So we'll get started with a quick summary of my career. So, as I've mentioned, I started working in esports broadcasts a little more than a year ago. I started by learning to observe and to produce esports streams, specifically Valorant streams, in a community called Galorants. Galorants is a community of marginalized gender players in Valorant and other games, and bi-weekly we do our in-house custom games where people in our community can sign up and play in a game with other Galorants members, and we usually try to stream them. Around the time that I had become a mod, there was also a high need for broadcast staff. We didn't have a lot of producers or a lot of observers, and I just wanted a place to belong. I wanted to serve the Galorants community because it had done a lot for me. I made a lot of friends through Galorants that I wouldn't otherwise have, and I really enjoyed playing Valorant. I didn't have many people to play with. It didn't always feel safe, and Galorants became that safe space for me. So when I became a moderator, I was really searching for a place to serve, and I found that in broadcast production because there was a shortage of people who were able to do it. So a more experienced mod gave me a crash course in producing a Galorants broadcast. And in like just an hour, maybe an hour and a half, I learned to put on a Valorant broadcast. I also got connected to an amazing person named Days Dreams, who is running a observer learning program in Galorants, and, you know, taught and mentored a lot of female and non-binary observers that you see in the Valorant space today. So it's thanks to those individuals that I was able to learn and get started in my career. So shout out to them if you guys are listening. Thank you so much for everything that you've done for me and everything that you've done for others as well. But you know, I too hope that I can be that person for other people, but without getting too sappy, right now at least. After I just, you know, learned the basics, it was just about getting reps in, right? It's about getting opportunities to gain experience, whether that be through the community events that we hosted or grassroots tournaments from other tournament organizers or other community events. And I got a lot of live broadcast hours practice by doing the Galorants community events, but I was also brought on for some other grassroots tournaments that I was able to get volunteer experience in, mostly in observing at the time. And as I got more hours practicing observing, and as my skills got better, my decision making got better, I was faster at making decisions and creating a narrative with my observing and telling a visual story. I was able to get paid gigs. It was very busy, I will say. I worked full time. I had also just started a graduate certificate program, and I really wanted to observe as much as possible. So I've mentioned this in a previous episode. I would work like a minimum of 50 to 60 hours each week to, you know, do my full-time job. I would be studying. I would also be like, you know, getting these freelance or these volunteer gigs just to get experience in broadcasting. I did grassroots for a while. I was connected to Pittsburgh Knights very early on to do observing for their monthly Valorant events. And it feels a lot like I was in the right place at the right time. I feel very lucky to be in the position that I am right now. And honestly, there's not much more to say other than I really grinded it out, put in the hours, sacrificed a lot of time and sanity and sometimes sleep to make it all work. But I would say a catalyst for my career was in March of 2022. That was Women's History Month, and everybody and their mother and their father, and, you know, just everybody seemed to want to do a marginalized gender tournament, or they wanted to do an initiative, or they were pushing initiatives for women and marginalized genders in esports. And in the month of March, that's when I received news that I was accepted to the 2022 Thousand Dreams Broadcast Her Academy Fellowship, which is a program for women and marginalized genders in esports to get connected to mentors, to receive a grant, and to go to Las Vegas to the HyperX Arena down there. That experience, being in that fellowship, really changed a lot for me. And if you are a woman or other marginalized gender, I highly recommend that you apply to one of their programs, because it made a really big difference for me. And I know that it can make a really big difference for you as well. So please do apply. when the time comes around for the 2023 fellowship or for grants that they give out, apply, shoot your shot. Even if you think you don't deserve it, you never know. But it was because I was given exposure to different sectors in esports, connected to mentors, and even got to shadow a pretty big production in the HyperX arena, not once, but twice, thanks to Thousand Dreams. I felt empowered to further my career, and I got to learn a lot from other people too. In addition to A Thousand Dreams, a lot of people were hosting marginalized gender tournaments, and they wanted as many people, as many roles to be filled by marginalized genders as possible. So I was able to come on to these events as a producer or as an observer. In April, I was invited to observe for Game Changers Series 1 in North America, and it was all really exciting. I did a lot in the months of March and April, worked really hard, and I feel like I was able to get my name out there as somebody who was really hardworking and was, good or decently good. I don't know how other people view me, but I felt like I was good. I was improving and getting better at observing and producing, and was somebody really eager to take on any opportunities that I could. So I sent a lot of cold DMs to people. I was always looking out for opportunities on Valorant, Talorant, or Broadcast GG. And anytime I could do something, I would do it. And that is why I am at risk of burnout at any point in time. But, we're figuring it out. But yeah. And then in May or June of this year is when I had decided that it was time for me to leave my non-esports job. I wanted to pursue my passion. I wanted to do this full time, and working a job that was not in esports and not incredibly flexible to what I needed at the time was very frustrating for me. It caused a lot of stress. And so I just quit, and I said, I will just figure it out. I'll work broadcast and work really hard to continue to have an income while I'm searching for a full-time job in esports. And thankfully, it didn't take me long to find a full-time job in esports. I quit my job at the end of May, and I got a new job in June. I now work in community operations or in marketing for esports full-time. And I also freelance and continue to do broadcast production and observing on the side when I am when I'm available and willing to do it, which I am always willing to do it, but I recognize that I need to build in breaks for myself as well. What else can I say about myself? I don't want to spend so much time talking about myself, so we're just, let's just start answering questions. So there are two sets of questions that I'll be answering today. The first one comes from JSParadise_ on Twitter. So they're asking, what's the best place to start producing? Remote games or collegiate or freelance things? And to expand on this, what's the best way to network, especially for someone who wants to work on esports broadcasts in positions such as technical directing, producing, or observing? And what jobs are out there for broadcast specifically? So once again, I will answer this to the best of my ability. I will say what jobs are out there for broadcast specifically. There are so many jobs out there. And I won't be able to list them all, but let's list the ones that I know about. jobs out there for broadcast specifically: remote broadcast engineer, remote broadcast producer. Those are, I think, two very common, I guess, roles, freelance roles that we see in esports broadcasting fairly often. Those are people like me and like you, maybe. People who are working off of their, well, oftentimes off of their own rig at home from Vmix or OBS or any other preferred live streaming software. And these are often found as contract positions, but full-time positions exist for them as well. Other roles in the production space include replay operator, graphics operator. Well, hold on, let's backtrack. The replay operator, of course, is the person who is taking replays for the producer to show on stream. They're building replay packages, depending on what on-air talent might be requesting or what the executive producer might be requesting. And then we have graphics operators, who are the individuals in charge of producing live dynamic graphics for the stream. You got your technical producers and technical directors. You have directors, who are like, those two roles are oftentimes separate in larger productions. The technical director is the person that is focusing on the technical parts of the broadcast, of course, things like pulling up graphics or pips at appropriate times, stingers, and running ads, and just focusing on the technical aspects of the production so that the director can focus on the creative aspect. So the director might be the person with the vision and is making cues to other people, whether that be camera operators, graphics operators, replay operators, and such. And the technical director is the person who is taking that vision and putting it into life. And I hope I'm explaining that in a way that makes sense. That is my current understanding of the difference between those two roles. But sound engineers, camera operators, transmission engineers, these are all different positions that are out there for broadcasts, and positions that are available are going to vary depending on the size and scale of the productions that you're working on, as well as, the need of the productions that people are putting on. A LAN production and the roles required for that LAN production is going to be very different from the remote productions that people put on. So yeah, those are the jobs that are kind of out there for broadcasting. And to answer questions about, networking and where to start producing, I started producing for community events. And, when I'm talking to other people about where they can start producing or where they can start observing, I always tell people, look for community events, look for volunteer opportunities and grassroots tournaments as well. And if for some reason you're not able to find those opportunities, create them for yourself. Get 10 people, 10 friends, 10 friends and friends of friends, whoever, to come into a Valorant lobby, play out a game, play out like maybe a best of 3 just for fun, where you can practice observing mechanics. If observing is something that you're interested in. Learn OBS, learn how to produce on OBS, and just put on a stream on your own Twitch channel. Invite people to come cast for you. Create your own graphics. Invite people to come to your event. Like if no one is going to give you an opportunity, there is nothing stopping you from creating an opportunity yourself with the people that you know. That's actually how I got started. I did a lot of events for other communities, but when I found a lack of practice opportunities, I would just do it on my own Twitch channel. I got my community together, we had already been doing community customs within my Twitch community. And I had decided I wanted to do a broadcast for them, just like I did in Galorants, or just like you might see for larger tournaments. So I invited volunteer casters to come and cast for it. I also learned how to produce the streams, and then I would observe too, and also admin at the same time. And it was a lot to manage for one person, but it was a lot of fun. And I also got to practice a lot of skills in a low stakes environment. It's for my own Twitch channel. If I mess up, whatever. It's my own Twitch channel. I don't care. But it can be more pressure when you start volunteering or getting paid work for grassroots tournaments or larger tournaments, sometimes even community events. So yeah, the best place to start producing is anywhere. And if you can't find anywhere, try to create those opportunities for yourself. The next question within this set is, what is the best way to network, especially for someone who wants to work on esports broadcasts? Once again, join esports communities, be a part of communities, find a space where you feel safe and where you might be able to find or create opportunities to make meaningful connections. If not friendships, make meaningful connections. And a meaningful connection to me can be friendships, but it can also be professional relationships, finding people that share a vision with you and that you enjoy working with. That's a meaningful connection. You might not be friends with everybody you meet. It honestly takes a lot of energy to develop friendships sometimes, right? And everybody's busy. But if at the very least you can find people that you share passion and that you share a vision with, you guys can all work together, whether it be now or in the future, on creating spaces, creating events, and doing work that you just really enjoy. Just, don't think about it too hard. Don't force it. Just make sure that any opportunity you have to meet other people, or I guess, network per se, that you're enjoying the experience, that you're enjoying the conversations that you're having and the people that you're speaking to. Networking, I think, is a very cold word, but the experience of networking is oftentimes very warm. It's literally just finding people who share the same dream or the same goals as you. So when it comes to what's the best way, I don't know that I don't know if I have the heart to say, go out to events or go out to just cold DM people and such, which, don't get me wrong, cold DMing is actually a very valuable way of meeting people and networking with others. But I would say don't go into it with the intention of trying to get benefit from somebody, just thinking like, oh, I want to be friends with this person because they might be a meaningful connection in the future, or I want to get to know this person because they're high up at a company that I would like to work for. Those just feel like really ingenuine experiences for me, and it doesn't make it fun, and it gets cold and it gets exhausting when you're always trying to benefit from networking. Don't force it. Make sure it feels comfortable for you and for other people, mostly for yourself though. And yeah, it'll come naturally, I promise. Our next question comes from Kopakashi on Twitter. Is there anything you wish you had started doing sooner that could have improved your efficiency when building or prepping for shows, or something that would have reduced your workload stress earlier because you eventually realized you were doing something the wrong way? Okay, first, in terms of efficiency for building and prepping for shows, I gave I gave another producer my vmix build, and I asked, hey, can you give me feedback on this? Either things that, you might do differently, or holes in this show that you think I should know about. And they responded to me, make labels, make as many labels as you can. You can never have enough labels. You can never have enough folders. It is going to help you organize and find the sources that you need, find the files that you need. Just don't be afraid of creating folders. If you need a folder only for your lower thirds, that's fine. At least you'll know exactly where your lower thirds are saved. If you only need a folder for, I don't know, background VFX, create that folder just for the one background VFX, because at least you know exactly where it's saved. And I took that advice. I started creating a bunch of labels and folders, and it was extremely helpful. So I would like to take that advice and extend it to other people and say, label everything, create folders for everything. You can never have enough or too much organization. Something that I also really appreciate is a standard naming convention system. So I have a naming convention system that makes sense for my brain and that I like to use. I do that with my OBS sources when I'm setting up, my personal Twitch stream. I have it for I'm sorry, it's 3:30 in the morning. My brain is a little slow right now. Don't ask why I'm recording a podcast past 3 o'clock in the morning. But anyways, I have a specific naming convention that I like to use for broadcast assets as well. So, for example, if I have different assets for a best of 1 match versus a best of 3 match, I will label it first BO1 underscore whatever it is, and then BO3 underscore whatever it is. And for if I'm building a scene with multiple sources, like I can get a little, I will admit, maybe my naming convention method is a little overboard, because I would also do like intro underscore VFX, intro underscore frame, intro underscore whatever. But that's what works best for me, is to know exactly what sources need to go into what scene. I also try to make sure that if I have to reference any graphics on a run of show, that I know exactly, that I like to number what that graphic is. So if I have lower thirds that are marked as like the 4th graphic that I'm going to be bringing in the entire show, I always refer to it as graphic number 4. And I know that's the lower thirds, and I see on the run of show that like we need the lower thirds pop up. I know that's 4, and it's also 4 in my sources. I could go on a little while about naming conventions and how they're helpful to me, but honestly, if naming conventions is just tedious for you and it is not going to help you, and you just know what things are named, don't go through creating your own naming convention, but definitely go through the organizational process of labeling and having folders, because you can never have enough folders. Do what makes sense to your brain. Second part of this question was about workload-related stress, things that you can do to reduce workload-related stress, because eventually you realize you were doing something the hard way. Audio. Managing audio sources. I feel like I was doing the hard way for a long time. I used to manage audio, and this is not just for esports broadcasts that I did. I picked this up because I didn't learn how to earlier in my, producing career. I just sometimes produced a broadcast in the same way that I would stream. So when I streamed, and this was baby Annie producer's mistake. Let me clarify, I don't do this anymore. I would put all of the audio sources on every single scene, and I would mute the audio sources that I didn't need when I swapped to another scene. So I would swap scenes, then mute all the audio, and then say clear. For example, if I am grabbing caster audio, their audio sources would be on every single screen. Don't do that. And if you don't know why, if you haven't experienced this yet, if you have caster audio on a breakplate for a BRB screen, you're risking hot mics. You're risking the casters being heard when they really shouldn't be. So now I set scenes only with the audio sources I need. If we are on a BRB screen, I only have the music that I'm playing there. And this is I feel like this is very beginner level advice or tips, right? But sometimes people just need to hear it. I am people. I am somebody that needed to hear, you are doing this the hard way. You do not need to be manually muting and unmuting audio sources on your stream deck like that. Just set the scenes with only the audio sources that you need. Also, set triggers in vMix. I used to automate all of my audio triggers on vMix, but then I found that I wanted a little more flexibility. And also vMix triggers are basically just, if I have to explain vMix triggers in 1 to 2 sentences, when you swap from one scene to another, vMix triggers will automate certain actions for you. So I use vMix triggers to automate some audio, to turn audio buses on and off, so I don't have to do this thing where I'm manually pressing a button each time I change a scene. So when I'm going to a BRB scene, I set a trigger so vMix will automatically mute the audio bus that I have caster audio being fed to. Or when I'm going from a desk segment to in-game gameplay, the audio source for the gameplay will automatically turn on when I swap to a scene with the gameplay on it. These are tools that will make your life easier. Tools for audio management that has made my life easier. I think there are some people that actually prefer to do manual audio mute, unmute, balancing manually, but it's not for me. As one person who is working on a production without an audio or without a sound engineer, setting the triggers for automating audio. And honestly, if you can, whatever you can automate or whatever you can do to make your life easier, please do it. But yes, I think that answers the question. I hope it answers the question. That is just it. Yep. I am running out of thoughts. So you know what time it is. I am LFT. I am looking for thoughts. How does Marks usually end the podcast? I don't really listen to him when he ends the podcast. I just smile and nod until he asks me what my thoughts are or what my final thoughts are. And then I say I'm LFT, looking for thoughts. I shouldn't rely on him too much, because then things like this happen where I'm recording by myself and I'm embarrassing myself because I don't even know how to end my own podcast. But anyways, if you enjoyed listening to the podcast today, please make sure to give us a follow on Twitter. You can find us at Push Buttons pod. Also, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube where you can watch the video version of the podcast and follow us on Spotify or any other podcasting podcasting platforms that you may choose to listen to us to. And once again, my name is ANNIEPOO and I am LFT, looking for thoughts. It is 3:43 in the morning at the time that I am ending this recording. I am exhausted. I am going to sleep, and I will see you next time.